Welcome everyone to Build.Grow.Repeat. I'm here with Jamie, a builder, that I want to talk about how he is moving from doing jobs as a product manager into building his own apps that he's dreaming about. But I'm sure you can do the best intro for yourself, Jamie. Welcome.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. A bit of a journey. I started as a developer, moved into product, and alongside that, had a couple of successful products, like smaller ones for myself. But in the last year, I think like many people, I've been focusing a lot more on trying to make that dream happen. And now starting to get some early traction on one of the products I built and hoping that that continues.
What made you move from a developer to product?
I think I found my calling. I mean, as a developer, I always got frustrated when I was building something that to me, it didn't make sense. And I obviously communicated this, but as a developer, my role had very limited, input over those things. But I think I always had like very strong product intuition. I guess there's the digital native phrase, but I was always playing with tech growing up. So I have this like intuition of like how things work and when they're good and bad. So it just really frustrated me whenever I was a developer and I was building something I didn't believe in. And when I tried to build a startup effectively, which was like an SEO A/B testing tool back in 2020, and obviously, I built that, and once it was live, it went a bit more into the product phase of like road mapping and, researching with users and trying to, get that to find product market fit. And I fell in love with product there. And then once that ultimately didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to, and I needed to look for work because my wife was pregnant, I had a choice of do I, go back to being a developer or do I, try to switch it up and go into product? I spoke with my wife and I said okay, I'm going to find a job, but is it okay with you if maybe I take a little bit more time at the start of this to try to find a product role? And she was really supportive at the time. So I tried to make that switch. And yeah, ultimately, I think that startup helped me get my first product role. And then I never really looked back. I enjoyed just being the strategic side and speaking with users and that side much more than being deep in the code side of things.
But I also remember this feeling of I was in my last own funded startup and I didn't like it anymore when my first child was still in the tummy. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do my own thing. And you kind of set up a rule. Hey, but as long as you're making more money than me, you can keep doing your Fantasyland stuff. But if not, you have to be the stay-at-home dad. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, this was like my absolute motivational push to get things working. And this was actually the time when I started Pirate Skills. And now my daughter is 11 and Pirate Skills just had its 10th year anniversary. So there's a strong correlation between those two.
Congratulations on the milestone.
Kids are a true driver for us builders to make it work for our families, but also so we can keep being the builder, right? Is it the same for you or how is it for you?
I mean, it's a bit of a paradox. So one of my main drivers for doing this is that I want to have more time with my family. And at least in the short term, I have much less time because I'm trying to, make it work. So I'm hoping it all pays off in the end. But I think it's just fun to build, especially these days. And I love that whole process. So I just have this feeling of solving a problem and making it feel great. That's something I find really rewarding. And I guess another challenge is then pulling myself out of that to then do the other things that are important, like the research and the marketing. And so that's where a lot more of my time is going these days. But the passion is always on the product.
Okay, that's cool. One more question on your position in the product manager role as opposed to developer. In a recent talk I presented, and I want to have just a third-party experience opinion on that in many teams you have the typical designer, developer, product manager setup, sometimes a little bit different. And the question I asked myself was, who of these three archetype roles is best set up in a world of vibe coding and agentic engineering to become the ideal builder? And whoever role you ask, they pretty much believe they are the ones. There was a great interview by the Anthropic CPO for Claude Code. She had a technical background. And so now she's saying like, all we're looking for is people with senior engineering experience, but that then can take on also the role of designer and product manager. If you ask a designer, they say they are ideal. And I was personally pretty sure that the product manager was the most ideal one because, and this is my rationale, and I want you to push back on that or whatever, is that this behavior of staying close to your customer, listening to what they want, road mapping, having taste for what is really desired, that is the most meaningful long-term skill, and developer implementation will be automated. But how do you think about that?
I mean, I think it's really hard to guess where this is going in like years from now. I think in years from now, all of the roles could be done very well by AI. At least that's my interpretation. But I don't think they're going to be completely replaced. I think it's like maybe I think of like WordPress as a good example here of like you have website development with people building bespoke websites, which has obviously been a thing, but website development in that form was like solved years ago by WordPress or other CMSs. Yet there was still like a lot of developers getting paid for bespoke systems because it didn't quite fit the WordPress, package. And I think AI is going to be a lot like that, of maybe like the Pareto principle probably applies of like maybe like 80% of websites could be solved by AI, but the 20% or whatever the percentage will actually be is still going to need the people. And I think this is where it's going to be of like, you're going to have the developers, the product managers and designers all focusing on these things. So you'll have like AI solving the general very well. But in terms of who's the best set up for it, I mean, I think it's also, sorry to be a bit on the fence, but depends on the setup. So I went to a meetup at 11 where 11 Labs were presenting lately. And for them, I got the impression that developers were the most important role, because the way they're setting up is like their developers are creating systems and tools and going very deep in reviewing the code to ensure that the AI is good enough at enabling the rest of the team to build things that are good enough for them to ship. So then you don't really have to be that good as a designer or a product manager to build good things, because the developer solved all of those problems with AI inside for the team. So for them, I would argue that they think it's development. I don't know for sure, but that's my interpretation. But I think for now, my real opinion on this is like the people who are best set up for this, I think in the short to medium term, are generalists. Like if you're someone who has like a pretty good understanding of everything, AI can make you a superpower in all three, pretty much. You just have to know what the right questions are to ask, and then understand whether it's, coming back is the right direction or not, and be able to just, pull a thread and research it a bit and understand it to move really deep and deliver, I think, very high quality. So if you're, generalists, I think are really going to win for now. And if you're someone who is in one of those roles but could step over already, then I think those people are the ones who are really going to win. Anyone who's very, like if you're a designer and like you don't have like those PM or the dev skills, I think AI is going to enable you to build in a way that wasn't possible before. So it's still great, but you're going to encounter the challenges that you wouldn't encounter, right, if you had a bit more knowledge. Like you would just probably blindly trust it on the dev recommendation, and maybe you'd have a really badly architected app that won't scale. So I think the generalists here, for now at least, are going to be the winners, unless you're talking like very specific niche, and then maybe that gets specific.
The Pirate Schools community is very much about like small but mighty teams, like 1 to 5 people that really pull things off. And if we look at what you have already created with the app that we want to talk about today, it's just amazing, like how much freedom that this gives builders like us to truly be not this just full stack developer, but be this full stack builder that also covers the go-to-market strategy of the products that we are building, the business operation behind it, with all the tax bullshit that we have to deal with, while staying in this, we need to develop a product that people really want a situation. Let's talk about how you also made the decision on the product that you are pursuing right now. And what I would really like to know is if you think you're going more towards like a portfolio approach or a single focused approach. And I always assume that you, from time to time, still have to take a job here and there to cross-finance things.
So the product is Still Mind Meditation Journal, and it came about because my wife is a yoga teacher and we both practice meditation, but not as much as we wish we would, I think is the truth there. So we try and have been trying for years, but being consistent is always a challenge. And my wife was just trying to, go through apps for something that she wanted. Her practice, she's a bit more traditional and she likes to face east. And there was just like, and we were moving around a lot with the kids. And she just couldn't find an app that would help her do that easily. So it started quite simply as I just built a simple meditation timer that had a compass in it so that she could face east easily when she was timing it. But then also because she's quite traditional in her practice and she's researched this, she was like, oh, I should be journaling after my practice to help me process the thoughts. So I added a journal in there at the end. And then some of her friends who are also into the same practices as her started using the app as well because she was like raving about it. And they also gave some great feedback and became really sticky users. So it started just a bit organically of solving that problem for my wife. And then once I also did it out of curiosity because this was like not at the very beginning of Claude Code, but like mid-July, June, July last year when it was starting to get quite good. And I was curious of how far I could push this. So I started playing on top of it myself. And I was curious about the AI guided meditation angle and having these personalized sessions. So and I found that quite enjoyable. And it ended up becoming this product which has the two themes. You can be self-guided and traditional, or you can go down the guided path, and it does both equally well.
I like the idea that you took something from your real life. You didn't go out, search like what are the highest keyword volumes for on Amazon, and then created like a breakfast box that is as generic as everything else. I still do the keyword research volume, but only after I've discovered something in my personal life, like Christina and I are now building an agentic wedding planner because we are planning our own wedding. We are scratching that own itch, and you have the built-in perfect product tester with your wife, and I with my fiance, which is grounding everything in truth. We builders sometimes can be a bit too far remote because we're more in love with the system of building than what we are building sometimes, and this very much grounds me. Does this help you as well?
Yeah, definitely, and I think. This was part of the motivation. So I did this at first, and it wasn't with the intention of building a product that would ship to make money. It was just a fun AI experiment to solve a problem for my wife. And also at the time, the team I was in, there was like a lot of pessimism and negativity around AI. And I felt that it was better than was being explained. So I also did this as like an experiment to just like prove to myself whether it was good enough or not. And then once I started doing it and the feedback came from people that this is really good and they love it, it ended up becoming a bit more, a little bit accidentally at first, but then it became a conscious choice of, wow, AI is really good. We're getting really good, like great feedback from people. And it's just fun to work on this at the minute. So then it became more of a conscious decision to keep going. But initially it was just, a fun thing.
When did this start? Still Mind app development?
Like I say, June, I'm not sure of the exact date. It was like June or July last year, so 2025.
Okay.
And it was live on the store. Again, I'm not 100% sure. I think it was September 2025 was when it first went live. And then at that point, it was just a timer. There wasn't the guided meditations on top and everything. And there were a couple of months, I think it was 2 or 3 months, where we were iterating on it and trying to get some users to get some feedback beyond the small group that we'd been testing it with. But it didn't make any revenue until I think December was the first purchase we got. And then that's been building up.
That must have felt good, the first online purchase.
Yeah, it felt pretty nice. At that point, I was starting to get a little bit losing hope of maybe it wasn't a good direction, after a couple of months. But then that first purchase kept us going for a while.
And since it took 3 months to be in the App Store, then another 2 or 3 months to have first-time revenue, how have you been thinking about this? Should I focus on one versus building a portfolio of products?
So, at that time, it was also just getting into the process of, I was learning a lot. So it was the first app that I'd submitted to the store myself. I'd been working on apps for years, but I'd never submitted my own to the store. So that was a learning process. And then I really wanted to go through just the process of finding product market fit with something. And I think my thought at that time was whether I'm focusing on this or something else, I'm going to have the same challenges. Once the product exists, it's about something else. So I focused for a long time there. And now I'm trying to very slowly start to build another app in the background. But I'm very much aware, like, I think I'm more productive than I've ever been because of AI. Not AI is helping me to do more, but also I'm more productive than ever. I think because it's just so much fun to do it now. But despite that, I still have like the most incomplete to-do list that I've ever had. You know, it used to be that I would have like a to-do list with 6 items on it for the day. They were all, you know, they'd all take a couple of hours. So then I would finish the day with like maybe, you know, 50, 60% done, but like of a small list. Whereas now there's a huge list every day and I'm doing a massive amount. But as you were saying before, you know, we're doing everything, like the marketing, the product, the research, the admin side. So there's just 4 full-time roles that I'm trying to all keep running.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge. I want to build more, I think, in the long term. Like I don't want, but I also recognize from doing this of just how it needs consistent effort and consistent focus for this to grow. And I do feel the momentum slowly building as I'm focusing. So I feel like if I was to switch focus right now for another project, it's kind of, you know, that meme where there's the guy walking down the street with his girlfriend, he's looking back. I think it would be a little bit that of something is going okay right now, and I would be getting a bit distracted. But I do have the ambition to launch another app or two. But again, realistically, I think I would limit it to 2 or 3 apps maximum once they exist, because then the time spent, you know, going between them all, at least from what I'm experiencing now, that would be quite intense, even with 3 products. So I do want to get there, but slowly.
Do you prefer to stay bootstrapped, or would you prefer to find some type of funding?
I'm quite open to both.
Okay.
I mean, it's nice to go the bootstrapping. I think that's the dream, right? Because then you have the ultimate flexibility. Funding would also be nice. I think for now, my main objective is to try to make this a sustainable income in the way that makes sense. So if there was an investment opportunity that made sense, that enabled that to happen faster, I would consider it. Because I think it's better to have 70% of something successful than 100% of something that's, you know, not quite made it. Yeah. So I would have, I guess, if it was the funding, it just increases the chances of that happening through, you know, acquisition benefits of the paid ads and so on. Yeah. That is a challenge by myself.
Well, it's cool that we have the options. To me, I think about it in roughly on a spectrum of 3 levels. On the one extreme, you have the fully bootstrap crowd, like Peter Levels or Mark Liu, type of people, really showing you don't have to get investing. You can do your own thing, build. Yeah, also do the marketing, and you will make it happen eventually. But building definitely the portfolio type of approach. And then in the middle, to me, is people like the microconf community around like Rob Walling, where they say like, okay, we are mostly bootstrapped, but under the right circumstances, we are open to taking money if it makes sense to grow, but the business needs to be profitable from the beginning. That is where I find myself most comfortable. And then there is the Y Combinator and all like more Silicon Valley investment. And they say like, you only can have one focus app that you do. Don't do a portfolio unless you're an investor in a portfolio. Go all in on that and make a ding in the universe type of things. I definitely fall like in the center right now. I would take on for Bridesmaid investors after I cross the 10K monthly recurring revenue line, which is for many builders, something with which they can comfortably feed a family.
Yeah.
We could get along with less properly. We know this, but it's more surviving than having this reliable thing that we could decide to completely focus on if the market would allow us to do this, and then search and see like, okay, is there an investor looking to invest at $1 million or euro evaluation? And then I'm totally open to step up the game if the market tells me that there is enough pull.
Makes sense. I mean, at the minute, like at least I'm trying to figure this out. So it's my first time going 0 to 1 from a nothing app to a big, like, you know, hopefully a bigger one. And right now it feels like, so I'm obviously, we're at 300 MMR mark now. And it's like, if I'm looking at all the funnels in the app, our onboarding is pretty healthy, our conversion rate is pretty healthy, the activation and retention and engagement is all healthy. They're within like the industry norms for meditation apps, like in the upper like medium to low high range. So I think the app performance actually is doing well, but the challenge that I have is because we're a new app, we don't have the authority. We don't have the organic traffic coming in. We're not getting like this organic flywheel running yet. It's just stuttering. So I guess this is where it'd be like a small amount of investment would be like a means to an end of like you would put that on paid ads or something, and obviously then have a bit of runway to figure out how to make them profitable. But then if you had that coming in, that would then help start the flywheel of then growing. And there are obviously like a bunch of ways to do this. Paid ads is one. Some people are really good at TikTok and they're able to do it. For whatever reason, whenever I'm not good at social, I've tried this direction and it's something that I keep trying on, but something that I never have success doing. It's not my strength. But what I've found some success doing is like SEO and ASO, and even now answer engine optimization. I'm doing things here, and obviously they're like a much slower burning acquisition channel, like built slowly, but I am seeing like on each one, like consistent growth month on month. So I feel like if I keep focusing here and I keep doing the things I'm doing, even if it takes a while, just the trend that I'm on will end up in a nice place. And then I think that they're quite sustainable. I mean, it can obviously disappear, but it's not like it disappears within a week once it's a working funnel. And hopefully they will lead to it over time. So that's my strategy of trying to take this, I guess, a slower approach, but hopefully one that's a bit more lasting. Wish I was good at social media and TikTok, but it's not my strength. One day I will be once I figure it out. But for now, it's not my magic.
So this is the Build.Grow.Repeat podcast. So let's go through that motion and talk about how you built your app, what your choices were, then how you go about it. You had, as you already mentioned, some very interesting ways in optimizing for SEO and GEO, and then how you manage that in your daily productivity lifecycle and how AI supports you to really do this on the side, being a parent, sometimes having these and that contracts. So let's start with building, and then talk about that, then move to growing.
Sure. So, I mean, I build with Claude Code. I was one of the early Claude Code users when it came out. And I remember when it came out, I spent a lot of time rebuilding the same thing 4 times because it wasn't quite good enough and there were lots of bugs, but it was still exciting. Now, I think obviously the AI is a lot better. And I've got better at using AI. So now I have a lot of systems in place. My documentation is like more mature. I know how to tell it to work with me. I tend to work a lot now with specs. So I have a spec-driven development approach. I spend a lot of time up front on defining exactly how I think this should work and thinking through edge cases and having a very detailed spec that almost reads like a PRD. So I have like what the problem I'm trying to solve is, who the user is, the different use cases, and then technical requirements. I'm spending hours sometimes refining that. But once that is clear, then I have like obviously like a bit of a harness system set up where it can just go through this spec and then test itself against this harness until it's done. And with this approach, it's getting to the point now where obviously I'm still manually testing everything, but when I'm spending that time on my spec, it's more and more often that I just go, I check it and I'm like, yep, that's done, tick. And I don't have to iterate some more. I think this is because my app, the design system is mature now, the code base is kind of mature. I obviously then have very specific ways of working defined. And this is like, I guess now one of the pains of just as an aside, whenever I do go to like a new project again that isn't quite as mature, it's more people to get to the same result because that ecosystem around it is not the same yet.
It's like we are all building our micro harnesses for each project, right? Yep. And it feels so slow starting a new project, and there needs to be a solution for that, for sure.
Yep. It's fun to solve the problem again, actually, but it just feels I could be so quick if I'm working on Stillmind versus then, and it's slowing down again. Yeah. But obviously, it'll be worth it in the end. It's just a noticeable difference now. I can see also, this is another side of when people are saying pessimistically, like AI is not good enough yet or made mistakes. I think this is also another example. Like you can even be someone who's experienced with it, but then you have like a mature ecosystem supporting it versus like a new project, and the outcomes can be very different. So I think it's just about anyone and everyone's spending that time making their systems mature for what they need to do.
And especially for people who go in the spec-driven development direction, which I'm not, for example, but I see the more developer-oriented people definitely embracing that stronger than the more vibe codey crowd. They feel the benefits of the self-built harness in each project way harder, than the vibe coders. And I feel like I'm the transition path. I don't want to go fully spec-driven development. I think that still feels like something very developer thing to do. That just feels like, this is similar to my old work flow, and it works for me, and it's creating consistency. It's satisfying those itches. Can you lead us quickly through what did you choose for development framework, and if you have chosen anything in terms of authentication, database, and payment processing, and where you stand with that at the moment?
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of these I would change now, again, because this started as just a fun project. So with that in mind, maybe I would make some decisions differently now. But I built on Flutter and Firebase. There is obviously like a Postgres like on my server for some things with Redis cache. I'm using RevenueCat to handle the payments, and obviously then the app and Play Store subscriptions for the monthly and yearly plans. Was there something I missed off that list?
If you would do it all over again, it's just a flavor, and grass is always greener on the other side. But in your current mind, if you had to do it all over again, what would be your choice for these tools now?
I mean, I would use Supabase. I don't think this one has a strong justification, except for that I want to use Supabase, and I think it would be a bit easier and a bit cooler sometimes. But Firebase is pretty good. I just would prefer Supabase. But apart from that, the main one is that I would not build it in Flutter. So I did that because I was thinking of this. It's got to work on iOS and Android, and at least so far, all of the success that I've been having has been, or the vast majority has been on iOS. I have like monthly active users on both platforms, and the retention is okay, but just as obviously many apps experience, the revenue potential on iOS is just massively different than Android. And it does hinder, I think, the iOS experience a little bit. Like sometimes when you're talking about like in the journal, for example, the writing experience, having to write that was with a library called Flutter Quill, and that's just very fiddly, and the UX isn't really as polished as I would love it to be. I mean, it's nice, but I would feel the difference if this was built natively in Swift, where it would be, I think, that level higher in terms of the final result. And obviously then in terms of iOS, one of my strategies is I'm trying to get featured. I mean, as is everyone, I guess, but hoping that I'm going to get featured. And because I'm using Flutter, I can't use the liquid that they're trying to encourage everybody to use. And that's one of the big focuses for Apple at the minute. So I think I get the impression of like, if you have that liquid glass UI, that the chances of you being featured are slightly higher than if you don't have it, because obviously it's their strategic objective to be pushing this right now. So I think objectively I had just focused on a single platform at first and tried to grow that one platform really well. And then, we could scale later if it's successful. So that would be the biggest change I would do
especially for single-player apps. It's different when you have the multiplayer discussion where there's always going to be bitching around if the Android app is not there, like Messengers, for example. But if it's a single-player app, it's a strong argument to say, like, let's focus on one platform. And I don't know if you saw the latest WWDC a couple of days ago. They are now putting agentic development also into Xcode. And normally the workflow is that you do everything in Claude Code and just have Xcode open and then use the preview tools from there. I'm curious to see like where this is going to lead.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I have a WWDC tip for people next year, if you remember. So during WWDC, I learned this. They have slots for developer, like editorial relations and marketing, where you can book in and speak with some of the team about the WWDC features. So I actually took advantage and booked one of those. And I had a half-an-hour call where I spoke with 2 editors, and they gave great feedback about my app. I don't know what the outcome of this is going to be. There were there's no promises or anything on the call, but it was really nice call. And we got to talk about the features and how I plan to implement them in the app. So it's a great opportunity because I spoke directly with editors, because up until now I have not been able to speak with one directly. It's always either been like a business relation manager or a developer relations manager. So it was great to actually speak with the people who decide what gets featured and not, and hear their feedback about like what was good about my app and my listing and what was weak. So I come away with like a huge list of things that I want to improve. And I guess I'm feeling a bit more confident that if I, action those, there's a much better chance of getting featured. Because when you submit the nominations, you don't hear back, right? So it's a bit like a black box and you don't really know what to improve next time. So that was really valuable. If anyone next year remembers, I would recommend to book one of those slots.
Cool. That relationship building you told me is also one of the edges you are trying to focus on to stand out.
So it's a bit hard. So we talked about this briefly before, but it used to be that the differentiator was like, I built an app, and obviously AI has changed that a lot, and that is no longer the differentiator. And then for a short period of time, the differentiator was, now I'm an app and I do marketing. And even that differentiator is changing because AI is making marketing so easy now as well. And of course, if you have a quality app with quality marketing, that's still a very strong differentiator. But in terms of just like, about marketing, this is becoming a thing now too. So how do you stand out when everyone can build an app and everyone can market an app? And I think, you can do some of these, maybe the long form things that I'm trying with ASO and AEO and SEO. But beyond that, I think the difference maker could be relationships. So a couple of months ago, I hired an ex-Apple editor as a consultant to give some feedback. She was really helpful. And I went to Poland to one of the Apple developer events where the focus was foundational models, and they gave some tips about how to integrate with those. But obviously at that event, I was speaking with the developers, and I was lucky enough to speak with like a business relation manager there as well. And one really cool tidbit from that trip is, at the time I went, they were considering apps for the Apple Design Awards, and the business relations manager that I spoke to actually put Stillmind forward to whoever was making that decision. And so I can say that it was officially considered at one point by someone for an Apple Design Award. It didn't get one. I don't know how. It probably wasn't close to getting one, but it's still an opportunity that, it was there in that list, which wouldn't have been at all if I hadn't gone to that event. So this is why I also tried to book this slot at WWDC, just to try to build some relationships and keep the human connection, because I think, at the very least, this is very valuable learning of what the Apple team think of my app. But hopefully by building these relations, that can increase my chances of getting featured. And not a proven strategy yet, but one that I'm investing in.
My theory on that is that it's not as transactional as like building SEO and paid advertising, but it acts as an additional filter to find the products from creators who care and who give a shit enough to do this, because there is so much just slop out there that from people who just think, okay, now everything can be copied. But it's true, everything can be copied, but caring about your product and about your audience, and then doing things like relationship building as one symptom of that is a very, very interesting edge. Let's move on to growing. So you build it with Claude Code, Flutter, Firebase, Revenue Cat. Yeah, that's the core framework. You might switch to something more native, but that's to be seen. Now, go to market, vibe marketing. What has been working, and how have you been approaching this?
So consistency on the SEO angle. I focused a lot on launching the website. We had no authority, so my strategy there was technical excellence. If you launch a website, we don't have the backlinks or the authority, then at least your technical SEO needs to be on point. So I spent a lot of time focusing on that and polishing the website. And actually, there was a nice success story of I launched and went from like a domain rating of 0 up to 26 within 6 weeks. And that's since balanced out around 15. So I think that was like the launch boost. I know that's not huge, but it's growing. And I see month on month that the domain rating is going up slightly. I see backlinks starting to come in organically now from the content that I'm creating, and just trying out different strategies. So for example, building out the core of the website and then having a blog strategy was one angle. But recently I started a different angle where it was creating like research posts. So one of them was just like doing deep research on like the latest meditation studies and compiling them into a narrative that's and then putting that out with the right links and citations and so on. And that got a lot of traffic from Google. And another one was obviously I'm not huge yet, so I don't have like a lot of data, but I have thousands of users to give signals. So, and there is not much data yet on this like AI guided meditation. So I released a research post which was about like the Stillmind statistics and one interesting analysis there is like with Stillmind, you can choose what type of guidance you want, like the tone, like whether you want it to be spiritual or scientific or a bit balanced or more compassionate. And what's really interesting is I expected this to be very high on the spiritual and the compassionate side, and then not quite low on the balanced and the scientific. That was just my assumption. But it's actually scientific is like 33% approximately. And like it's quite evenly split between like scientific and compassionate. And then spiritual is one of the lower actually. So this really surprised me. So there's some tidbits in that article which I shared. And at least from a Google and an SEO perspective, they got a lot of impressions and they were working. So that's one angle, the SEO. I don't know if you have questions there before I move on to...
Yeah, I do have questions. And I know it's super interesting what you're going to say next, but what's the content generation workflow like and the frequency for the article pieces in terms of creating them and then publishing them?
Yes. So I obviously use AI here to help a lot. I have created a skill which automates like a lot of the process of creating this blog post. But I also use Whisperflow a lot in my workflow. I don't know if anyone else uses this, but it's a superpower to speed up. I give so much more context and the output is much higher because of that. But essentially, I built it into my flow that my strategy is for blog posts. I have obviously like a contextual mindfulness system over time. I'll run this skill and it basically, there's research on my competitors to see what posts they did recently. It checks the SEO traffic for my Google Search Console and Bing to see recent fluctuations in content, which ones are getting traffic, which ones are not. And also then there's just some wider research on like the current time of the year and the themes that are coming up to see if there's opportunities. And it comes back with me a list of recommendations based on this of like, you should write about X, Y, or Z. I then choose the one that I think is most relevant to the site or most interesting to me. And then it goes out and does a bunch of user research. So checking like forums and boards about what people are actually saying about this and comes back to me and gives me this like information. And then I then spend 5-10 minutes just creating a narrative of what I interpret this in my head of like, this should be the main theme of the post. Here are my 2 cents on this. You know, I give it as much information about how I want this structured as possible. And then it comes back to me with the drafts and we refine it a bit. And once that's refined, then the rest of the flow is automated to publish, essentially. So I try to do it so that it is AI generated, but it's not AI slop that's coming out. There's like my tone and my narrative throughout the whole post. And I try to produce that way.
What's the frequency of publishing?
The frequency, I try to do at least once a week. That's my minimum. But there are some weeks where, and I'm trying to experiment here as well to see if I notice differences based on how frequently I'm pushing. And I've gone through periods where I do one a day for like a week or two. And I do see that when I post more regularly, it grows a little bit faster, but it's not like hugely different than if I'm posting once or twice a week.
But it's also hard to tell because the SEO growth is on a monthly scale. Yeah, not on a day-by-day scale or citations also, and definitely not on a daily scale. Some changes you see, but often for articles you have written and published weeks ago.
So recently, actually, I published tools. This is one of the strategies that I see that vibe coding sites are happening a lot lately of creating like these free tools from SEO perspective. So I did the same thing maybe a month or 2 ago, and I added like a quiz, like one of these. I mean, it's a bit old school now, but it's an experiment of like what type of meditation suits you, and you can answer some questions and it'll tell you what type. I made this like quiz. It's on the site. Yeah. And I had a boost on Bing in the last week. It was like thousands of impressions. I'm like, what's this? And it was like a month or a month and a half later that this just got discovered by Bing out of nowhere. So it can happen delayed.
And I just want to double click on a couple of things there. The Whisperflow recommendation cannot be overstated. I've been speaking 800,000 words into Whisperflow now. And since I have it, they have a beautiful dashboard where you can see like your word count and giving it just a lot of context. Yeah. And using this to then, second double click is doing the job, but also creating a skill that you keep on polishing while you do the job every week. And you go through this motion of using the skill to do the job more fluently. And then you notice things that you want to improve in the skill. That makes your job more fluent. Is that also what you go through usually?
Yeah, definitely. So with the skills, I create version 1, and at the start it's very like gated. So check in with me after each phase. And then the more I use the skill, like once I notice one phase is very consistently what I want, I'm like, okay, automate that phase now, continue. And then piece by piece, I automate the different phases until there are some, like I say, with this post where there's always going to be a check-in with me to make sure that it's authentic. But everything else, I start very manual, step by step, but still with the skill. But then once I trust the skill more, I then like allow it to run more and more and more. And like you say, some skills I think I've iterated on for like 2 or 3 months. And one, maybe it's a nice segue actually into what's next. So another one of the things I'm doing is like for obviously answer engine optimization to try to get traffic from the AI engines as well, because I actually noticed that they're like the highest performing segment for me from a metrics perspective. But I built the same kind of system. I've got the same kind of system for SEO, and I had the same system for ASO too. And when I was running ads briefly, I was also using the same system there. But basically, I created a harness. So I built like a context management system. So essentially, I started an experiment where I want to increase my traffic from AI. So I ran a search with my own AI to gather, I defined maybe 30, 40 search terms that I wanted to see if AI is recommending me for. So like, AI meditation apps, meditation journal apps, and so on. And then I tracked in this context management system how many referral citations I was getting from AI, and if I was the top recommendation or just one of the recommendations. And this became my baseline. And I noticed at that point that I was getting recommended for some things, but not most of them. And also when I was getting recommended, AI was like hallucinating exactly how my app worked. I was misleading. So anyway, I did this experiment where I created an AI mirror of my website. So if you go to like getstillmind.com/AI, you'll see like a very AI optimized version where the content is all written in the FAQ format. This is linked to in the LLMs.txt file, and it's linked to in the footer of my website where it says like 4 agents. And I created this website, which has themes and categories of questions and then very clear answers. And obviously, because this is duplicate content, one key factor here was having the canonical links back to the main pages on my website so that it wouldn't hurt my SEO. So I built this system and I launched it. But when I launched it, I also integrated with through a custom integration with my Google Search Console to monitor my impressions and clicks from an organic SEO point of view to make sure that this system was set up to not harm my SEO. And I integrated with analytics on my website to then track and identify like bots coming to my site from AI and which type of bots, whether it was a research bot or a citation bot. And I launched this, and then at first I was checking in daily. I created an agent with a skill to check, like pull all this data down, analyze it, tell me if there's any warning signals, and so on. At first I was doing this daily, and every day it stored a data snapshot in my context system. And then I do this now weekly, every single week for my SEO, for my ASO, for this AI system.
That's so cool.
Every week I'm getting it. And it's a really cool system because when I launched this, actually the first meditation statistics post I was talking about earlier was on its downtrend from the impressions boom it got in Google. So I launched this, and then the next day my traffic impressions tanked, and then the day after they tanked again. And then I had this mini heart attack saying, oh no, I broke my SEO. And I was analyzing it with this system that I'd built, and it was like, no, this is your general traffic is fine. It looks like this is a single post. So this system helped me ride out that wave when maybe I would have panicked without it. And thanks to this system, it's now 6 weeks in, and I know because of this that my citations are up 12%. So I'm getting more recommendations from AI for more of the search terms that I want. It's fixed the hallucinations, so it's now actually accurately describing my app. And my current traffic is, a week ago, it was 60% more traffic on my site being referred from AI than before. I think it's higher this week, but I'm not entirely sure what that number is just yet.
This is all your own harnessing. You're not using a lot of external tools for that, except for Google Search Console. That is super cool. Normally, people don't completely come up with these types of systems out of nowhere. So could you maybe recommend a couple of great resources, podcasts, YouTube channels, creators that you consume in order to keep yourself up to date?
Ooh, honestly, I'm not, sorry to be a bit, but I'm not in the consumer space so much on there. There are a couple of podcasts that I follow. So there's How I AI is one, which I think is pretty good. I also listen to Lenny's podcast, though a bit less now that I'm focusing on this. Obviously, that was more when I was like product. I think there's some great things on there, but I find it a little bit less relevant these days. And then I do search around. So I find myself like going around different like indie and growth podcasts and trying to just find, but here I'm like focusing more on like the stories and the episodes, like trying to find like the stories that and the products that I find engaging and listening to those. So I'm very much only like a podcast person. I'm not a YouTube. I do open threads regularly. So I follow like Boris on threads, Boris Cherney, and I try to optimize my threads algorithm so that I'm seeing AI and building threads, and I guess like just passively trying to learn as much as I can whenever I'm opening those things.
You just mentioned like your website analytics. What do you use for web analytics and for app analytics?
So app analytics, I use Amplitude. It's really cool. I managed to get onto the startup program there for the year. So hopefully by the time that runs out, it's making enough money that I can keep using Amplitude. And for the website, I'm using Google Analytics.
Okay. This is also my stack. In the past, I have observed for myself that I moved everything to post hoc. Yeah. I'm in Germany. Both free for 1 million events a month. It is pretty GDPR friendly, and it's web and mobile, and I'm very much in love with this product. And I think it also fits very much to like spec-driven development people that want to take user behavior straight into the product development cycle. I'm convinced they're fully believing that they are building a self-building product development tool. At the end of the day, you can use any analytics tool like Amplitude, which is fantastic for that as well. Super glad I got rid of Google Analytics over the years. But since I now can talk to Google Analytics with the MCP, it's not as bad anymore to build dashboards and everything. You can just pull the raw data and it's fine. But I was curious, like what your analytics stack is for that.
I'm going to check that out. I don't know. Analytics is okay, but it would be the thing that I would replace. I used to use Mixpanel too, and that's one of the things I did swap out because it was just not as nice to use as Amplitude. But I haven't checked out PostHog. I will have a look.
Okay, before we wrap things up, is there any other topic that we missed out on that we need to take 3 minutes on?
I think we covered a lot.
We covered a lot.
There's definitely more to talk about. I mean, there's like a year of experimenting and learning here, but I don't think there's anything shouting at me. So maybe we have any more questions, but I think we covered a nice amount of ground.
And thank you for sharing so much, Jamie. That was wonderful. And if people want to check out the app, it's getstillmind.com. And if you search it in the App Store, it's just Still Mind as one word.
Yeah.
And they can look you up on LinkedIn, get in touch with you, and have all of the important links for you in the show notes. Any last thing I want? If you hit the 10K MRR, can you come back?
Yeah, of course. I would love to.
Yeah, and give us an update on that, how that made family life change, and if you went for number 3 or not in terms of family plans, and how your portfolio has developed. Would be wonderful to know that. Okay?
Yeah, of course. Would love to come back. One final plug for Stillmind. So I think for me, my wife loves the self-guided side of it, which is nice. So if you're into timers, you should check that out. I personally love the AI guided side because it just hits different. So I'll give like a personal story for me of one time when I was meditating. So I think just like with everything with AI, the more context you give it, the better it is. And it's the same with an AI guided meditation app. So I tried to design this in a way that whenever you start a preset, it'll ask you some questions, like say like you're stressed. It'll be like, why are you stressed? And it's like work stress, family stress, something else. And you can choose. So even if you don't have the time to type lots of things in, it'll still give you a very personalized meditation compared to a standard library. But there's always like you want to say something more. And I would recommend people play with this. So I gave it once a couple of months ago, where I just dumped into this. I'm like, I'm building this app. I'm trying to achieve my goals with my family. It's really fun, but it's really stressful and really tiring and compromising on time with the family right now, but it's going to be worth it if it's successful. And I think I just dumped in it and was like, give me a meditation about this. And it sat there, and obviously, 80% of it is traditional meditation, sit and breathe and watch your breath. But the percent that is personalized came to me, and it was like, imagine like where in your body are you feeling this pressure right now? So I was feeling it in my chest. It was a bit tight. And then I was talking about that. And then after like a few minutes, I said, okay, now imagine that you've achieved this goal. And it doesn't matter how and the why, but just now you're in the future and this goal is achieved. And how does that feel? And I felt this, just the release on my chest, and it felt free and breathing. And then I had this very emotional reaction to just the feeling of like weightlessness and how good that felt. And I know that is probably one of the strongest meditation experiences that I had so far in my life. And I think that wouldn't have been possible unless I had, this personalized experience. And I've had many others like this, but just that was an example I wanted to share. So if anyone's curious, please check it out. Please share your feedback. You can do it from inside the app. You can reach out to me on Threads or anywhere. But I would love to keep making this app better so that more people can have moments like that.
And you built this, Jamie. That's something to be proud of. Doesn't matter like how big this becomes, but it is actually something you created that has impact on you and your families and friends' life, and now on others. And yeah, just enjoy that feeling as well, and keep building, growing, and repeating the whole process. Good luck with this. Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Bye.